everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Tomcat Stitchery. I'm Whitney and welcome to another Sunday sew along. So today we are tackling underwear, in particular the Acacia underwear from Nielsen Patterns. Now, this pattern is free if you sign up for her newsletter. You can buy it, but I mean, why not just sign up for the newsletter and get the pattern for free? She actually has a few different patterns you can get for free if you sign up for her newsletter. So that is where I got this pattern. I've been using it to cut out underwear out of knit scraps. So I just did t-shirt week here on the channel a couple weeks ago now. And as I was cutting out those t-shirts, I was also trying to get tank tops out of that yardage as well as underwear. And cotton jersey is the perfect fabric for underwear, although pretty much I wouldn't use a polyester knit, I don't think, for underwear. That would get way too hot. Although I say that, but my Soma underwear that I wear, I'm pretty sure, is completely polyester. So, you know, whatever. Just I would use cotton maybe for the gusset. It is 3 pieces. It is a front, a back, and then a gusset that goes in through the crotch. So it's a 2-piece for the gusset. You cut out 2 gussets. But it's very simple to get a pair of underwear out, and they're really fun to sew. So I have made 4 pairs actually. I made one, this is the pair I made first, with the fold over elastic. And as you can see, this is what we call poor fold over elastic installation, because as you can see, it's like flopping over. Maybe you can't even tell that. It is. It's not good. However, I've still been wearing them. I wanted to make up a pair because I wanted to try the pattern out before and make sure I liked the way it fit before I cut out a whole bunch out of the scraps. I love it. I really love this pattern. I love the way it fits me. Now, I'll still wear these. It does flop around the fold over elastic when it's not on my body, and these have been washed quite a few times, but when it's on my body, everything, you know, gets stretched and hugs pretty well. But this is not how we want to do it. I actually had read somewhere, I was trying to install it without stretching the elastic because fold over elastic will pull back so much. No, you still need to stretch it, or at least I do. I am going to do a little disclaimer here. I'm not great at fold over elastic. It is something that I've only gotten better at in the past year. Before then, all of my seams were like, woo, like super wavy, super wonky. The things that I've learned to help with that are, number 1, my stitch length. I find that doing a 4 width and a 3 length, so a longer stitch length, has really helped with that wavy problem. And I still need to stretch my elastic as I sew it to make it lie flat. But anyway, I made this pair of underwear, love the way they fit, so I decided to go ahead and make, you know, cut out more in whatever scraps I could get. So today's video, I am showing you 3 different ways that you can finish those off. I'm also showing you how to sew the underwear, number 1. They are all, you know, all pairs got sewn the same way. Very easy. You can do it on a sewing machine, you can do it on a serger, whatever your preference is. And then 3 different ways that you can finish off the waistband and the leg holes. Now, there's a lot more ways you can finish those areas off. In fact, I wanted to show you, Melissa from Melly Sews has a free underwear pattern on her site too, and I was looking at them. She had just sewn some up the other day at the way she finished hers, and basically what she did for hers was she serged the top waistband of the underwear and then the leg holes, and then applied stretch lace, and it looked like she had just top stitched it on top of that serged line. So you could only see that it was serged when the underwear was laying flat, because you could see the wrong side of the back part of the leg hole, basically. So yeah, if you have any, and I don't even know where I got this stretch lace, to be honest, but I have like a thicker width and I've got a thinner width. It was in my lingerie drawer. No idea where it came from. So that's fun. And I only have just a little bit of this. I have no idea where this came from. But this would be fun to top stitch, and I would use that same stitch length. A zigzag with a 4 width and a 3 length. That seems to be the magic number for, I use it when I do my swimsuits too. But anyway, that is another way that you could finish these off. Alternatively, throw that over there. So basically you would just be top stitching that on to the legs, and it would kind of be acting like elastic. It would pull in just a little bit, which again, I had super wonky seams on that underwear and they still fit fine. You know, when you're using a stretch fabric, a jersey, they seem to, you know, cup your body and stretch to fit their intention, so they seem to stay well. What was I gonna say? Oh, you could also, and for instance, I'm gonna show you these 3 pairs that I've made, but with the elastic, like the picot elastic, you can sew regular elastic to the wrong side with the zigzag and then flip the whole thing over and then top stitch so that the elastic is completely enclosed. I would have shown that way, sorry, eyeball. I would have shown you that way, but I have no elastic, as I'm sure a lot of you are also in the same boat, regular elastic. I did have some of this lingerie elastic and some fold over elastic from when I was in Chicago, but all of my regular elastic has now been turned into masks. So, and it's impossible to get. So on that note, one way you can finish off underwear is with bands. So this is the same way that you would do a neckband on a t-shirt, except instead of cover stitching the seam down, I just zigzagged, and you can see that there. And I did a really thin band for the leg holes. But that is way 1 that I'm showing you how to finish. Aren't those fun? I mean, I can't wear them with white shorts, but I think those are so cute. Yeah. I mean, literally this fabric is all of my colors, so I could use a whole bunch of my different scraps to finish this off. And then alternatively, I am showing you how to take a picot elastic, which is the elastic that has a scalloped top of the hem to it. Now the way I install this, you could very easily do this for with regular elastic, except instead of sewing this right sides together, you would sew the elastic on the inside so that when, you know, you would sew it so that when it got flipped under, you know, it would disappear. Obviously we want the little edge to show on these, so I show you how to do those. I think these are so cute, and they remind me of mint chocolate chip ice cream. So that is some picot elastic. You can find that a lot of different places. I got mine in Chicago when I was there back in the fall. And then the third way I'm showing you is the correct way to do fold over elastic. So that's how it should look. It should all be under tension. It should be some gathering. You can see how the butt kind of cups in on the inside, so then when my actual rear end is in there, this elastic's gonna cup that really well. So yeah, can you pinpoint what shirts these came from? So there we go. 4 pairs of underwear. 3 I'm really happy with. The 4th one, it's fine. I'm still wearing it. I've worn it actually quite a few times. My underwear drawer is in major need of a rehaul. But these are just so much fun to make and really kind of quick. And honestly, sewing all of the elastic, it's a great way to sit and practice, especially with the fold over elastic. All of these ways, if you don't get it on the first try, that's okay. Number 1, it's underwear. So if it's not perfect, who's seeing it really? And number 2, these are just made with scraps anyway, so they're a perfect thing to kind of practice on and practice your elastic insertion. I just find, I mean, there's just so many fun combinations you can make, and I love my warmer fabric colors with my pastel trims. I just love that unexpected twist there. So anyway, of the 3, I think these might be my favorite. I think they might be the most comfortable to use the knit bands from like you would a t-shirt neckband. But I'm gonna wear all of them. And I have a whole bunch of that elastic anyway, and so I'm probably gonna play around with that going forward. So there you have it. I am now going to pop to the tutorial, so I hope you enjoy that. Next week we're going to start with the Butterick Sew Along, so stay tuned for that. I'll pop a picture of that pattern up here so you can maybe try and get a hold of that if you haven't already. Or you can always just watch the video once stores open back up and you can get it again. But it's a Butterick See and Sew pattern, and I'll be making that up starting next week. So that's all I've got for today, and I will see you guys in the daily vlogs if you're watching those. Otherwise, I will see you for the next formal video on Tuesday. Have a good one. Bye. Okay, let's sew some underwear. So we're gonna do 3 separate pieces, and I'm gonna show you 3 different ways to do the elastic, but first things first, we have to assemble our underwear. So let's, this is actually the easy part. It is not hard at all. So I'm just gonna pick one, but I am gonna sew all 3 pairs up the same way. And I think I'm going I pull away from the instructions here just because this just made better sense for me to do it this way, so that's what I'm gonna do. So here is our back piece. It's the bigger piece, and you should have 2 gusset pieces, which is basically the crotch piece, and then the front piece that is, you know, a little skimpier looking, although these are not skimpy underwear. I've made a pair just to check fit before I cut out a whole bunch of these, and it is pretty, it's a nice coverage underwear. So first things first, I'm going to, so your gusset piece should have, on the bigger side, has 2 notches, and those match up with the 2 notches that I didn't cut on the back piece. So it's here at the crotch. So we are going to sew these. There is a 1/4 inch seam allowance in this underwear pattern. And then I'm going to take, so this is right sides together. This pair makes it really easy to see because it's white on the back. So right sides together, we're gonna put those together, and then the other gusset piece is gonna go right side to wrong side. So you're basically have your 2 gusset pieces right sides together with the back piece sandwiched in between. So you have 3 layers. So definitely use pins. There's again only a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and it is a little bit curved, so it can be just a wee bit tricky. So I'm going to use some pins here just to help keep these. And the quilters Wonder Clips, sewing clips would also be very handy here as well. I've actually never used those. No reason why, I just never have. So we're just going to okay, so that's what it's gonna look like. So we've got our 2 gusset pieces, the wide side of our gusset pieces, right sides together with the underwear sandwiched in between. And this is the bottom part. And now we're very carefully gonna sew it a 1/4 inch across this seam. I'm gonna use my serger, but you can definitely use a stretch stitch on your machine, which is just a narrow zigzag. If you don't have a stretch stitch, which looks like the little lightning bolt on your sewing machine, you can also use a real narrow zigzag. If you use a 1 width and a 2.5 length, that's, I think, the same measurement as the stretch stitch. I'm just gonna use my serger because it's here. Very careful with pins and a serger. That is not a good combination. I have hit a pin with my blade before, and it cost me a lot of money to fix. So once you've got that, that should open out. And now it kind of looks like this. So now you have this extended piece. So now we are going to sew the bottom of our front to this. So it's the same thing. You're gonna sew the right sides together with just one piece here, because you can go ahead and pin if this helps. We're basically doing this the burrito style, so that all of our seams in the gusset are nice and enclosed. Okay, so I have the front, and one piece of my gusset is still loose here. Right sides together with the one piece of the gusset. So we can just roll this up. Well, roll this up, and then here is the second piece of the gusset so that it can come up here to meet that. So basically, we've got 3 layers again, and it is the gussets right sides together with the front of the underwear sandwiched in between. So one gusset piece will be right side to right side to the wrong side of the front, and then the other gusset piece will be right sides together with a piece of the front. So again, we've got 3 layers. And now we're going to sew that seam at 1/4 of an inch. And you can pull everything through one of the sides. And there we have the wrong side of our underwear, which you can see wrong side, but you do have the gusset piece that's facing up. And then the right side of our underwear. So it's nice in a big weird shape. So now we're gonna put our front to our back, right sides together at the side seams, which are very short. And we're gonna sew those at 1/4 of an inch. Do that on both sides. And there you have it. We have a pair of, well, inside out underwear. But there is the basic construction of the underwear. So now I'm gonna do this for the other 2 pairs, and then I will go and show you 3 different ways to finish off the waistband and the leg holes. So let me sew up these other 2 pairs real quick. All right, the first method that I'm going to show you how to do this is basically finishing off both the waistband and the leg holes like you would a t-shirt neckband. I went ahead and I measured the waist of the finished waist of the underwear, and then took 85% of that. So I take 15% off because I want the knit to hug me, and that came to 26 inches. So I cut one strip 26 inches by 2.5 because I want my finished waistband to stick out an inch above. That's just a personal preference. You can make it as thick as you want. Just remember to include 1/4 inch seam allowance on both sides of that because it does get folded over on itself. And then my leg holes, I did the same thing, measured the entire leg hole, and then multiplied that by 0.85 because I wanted to take away 15%. That's the ratio I like for my cotton spandex, which is what this is, and that came to 18.5. Now these strips I only cut 1 inch wide because when I sew these on, I've made this underwear once, and I did the fold over elastic, which I'll show you how to do. But fold over elastic works the same as binding, and you could definitely finish these edges just like you would finish if you were binding a neckline or an armhole. And there, you know, you can go back to the t-shirt neckline video if you want to know how to do that. It's the same thing. You would just leave your your side seams undone for the legs, and then one side seam undone for the waist. But you could definitely finish that way. But when you use the fold over elastic, you're basically binding the edge with the elastic, so you have all of the width here. There's no seam allowance, in other words, on the top. With this, you will be using a seam allowance, and when I show you how to use picot elastic, you'll also be using a seam allowance. but things get added back because we're gonna sew this and then the width of this will come back into the underwear. So it all comes out in the wash, if that makes sense. So even though when I'm making this, I get folded under 1/4 of an inch under, I'll have 1/4 of an inch of this poking out. So that would be the same as having the fold over elastic. Does that make sense? And the same with the picot elastic that I'm gonna show you how to do as well. The only time that this would not be the case is if you were sewing regular elastic to the wrong side and then just turning it under and top stitching. That would take that seam allowance away and everything would be 1/4 of an inch in further, which is fine. It's just a, you know, personal preference. So just keep that in mind. I hope that wasn't confusing. So first things first, so I made this 1 inch wide because when these are folded up, I only want 1/4 of an inch of this coming out the leg hole because I don't want it to get too bulky, especially between the legs. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to sew my short ends together. I'm using a serger. I'm just gonna sew all 3 of these bands, short ends together real quick. Okay, I had to cut my waistband in 2 pieces just because my scrap of fabric that I had, I didn't have anything long enough. But now I'm gonna go to the sewing machine and I'm just gonna press all of these bands right in half. So I'm gonna give those a good press, and because this is all cotton jersey, it should press really nicely. So I'm gonna go do that real quick and then we're gonna quarter everything. Okay, now I have my 3 bands. I have my leg bands, which are gonna be very fiddly because jersey likes to curl. Just the nature of the game, and then my waistband. So we are gonna quarter these. So basically I'm gonna take my seam. I'm not gonna cut notches in this just because we're working with such a small piece. So I'm just going to pull it taut like this. So I'm gonna just stick a pin at my quarter marks for this. And then I will line up my pin with my center backs or my seam. So this is a great method to use, especially now when elastic is so scarce for all the mask making. So if you want to make underwear and you don't have any elastic, this is a great option. All right, so just like that, I've got my center back seam as one spot, and then I've got my pins quartered for the other. So then I'm going to go to my leg, and what I like to do is find actually, never mind, there's a notch in this pattern. So there's the notch, and I'm going to match it up to the side seam and come up with, and the notch is in the middle of the gusset, come up with 1 pin mark, and then my other. This one's a little harder because typically there's kind of a curve to that back piece, so just kind of get it the best you can. Technically, you want to pull things a little tauter throughout the back and less through the front of the leg. In my swimsuit making, I have found that sometimes if the elastic is too tight in the front part of the leg, that can be kind of uncomfortable. All right, so now I've got this quartered. So I have my 2 pins, I've got my side seam, and then I have the notch that's here in the gusset. So now I'm gonna match up my seam of my band to my side seam. And put a pin in there. And then I will put the pin across from it, match it up to the gusset notch. And then match my other pins, and like you'll notice, the band will be smaller than the opening, which we did obviously on purpose. And now I'm just going to sew, and I'm going to sew with the underwear on bottom, and I'm just going to slightly pull this band to fit as I'm sewing around the leg. This is a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I shouldn't be cutting anything off. And if I'm cutting anything, it should just be kind of like a haircut, like a very small amount trimmed. All right, and then when that's done, we can press the seam allowance up. And at this point, I would recommend definitely you want to top stitch that down. You can either do that with a cover stitch, or I'm just going to do it with a zigzag stitch when I am zigzagging the elastic in with the rest. I'm absolutely fine with a zigzag stitch there. But there, you've got a nice, pretty leg. It needs to be pressed, but it'll only be a little 1/4 inch that'll be sticking out above the underwear there. Okay, so I'm gonna do that for the other leg, and then I'm gonna do the same thing for the waist, and then, yeah, I think I'll wait. Yeah, I'll show you, I'll do this real quick on camera, and then I will show you the finished once we have zigzagged it with everything else at the other machine. All right, now that this is all nice and sewn, I'm gonna go, that's the back, I'm gonna go and press all of my seam allowances, because as you can see, they're flipping out over here, which is fine. We'll take care of that in a minute. But I'm gonna go press all of my seam allowances towards the body of the underwear, and then I will meet you over at the home machine, because we're gonna do some zigzag stitching. Okay, so we're over here at the sewing machine, the home sewing machine, because my industrial does not, in fact, do a zigzag. So if I want to do any zigzagging, which is not that often, I have to come over here. Okay, so let's do, change my thread color here. So for all of these applications going forward, I'm going to use I've got a stretch needle in my machine. I'm actually going to put a walking foot on my machine. If you don't have a walking foot for your home machine, it is a very fantastic, wonderful foot to buy, because it's fantastic for any slippery fabric or knit fabric. It just basically feeds the top through at the same rate that the bottom feed dogs are feeding through. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is for all of these, I've got a stretch needle in. Do I? Hold on, I don't think that's a stretch needle. As I'm talking about it, I do want a stretch needle. And I'm gonna use a size 11 stretch needle. Nope, that wasn't a stretch needle. I'm going to use a size 11 just because these are about mid-weight jerseys that I'm working with. So that should be a good size needle. I prefer the stretch to the ballpoint. I think it has to do with the eye of the needle that's the difference. I mean, a stretch needle is a ballpoint needle, but the Schmetz that actually say stretch just seem to work better with anything with Lycra in it, in my opinion, so. Okay, so I'm gonna turn the underwear inside out just because it's easier to sew in a hole. And I'm basically just going to top stitch, and I'm gonna do a zigzag. I'm just gonna do a regular zigzag stitch, and I'm going to make it a 4 width and a 3 length. So it'll swing out 4 millimeters and down 3 millimeters. When I'm not great at fold over elastic. I think it's something that takes a lot of practice, but Evie Lelouve, when I was making a pair of her underwear, she has a really good fold over elastic tutorial, and that was the stitch length that she suggested to use, and I just found it worked so much better. So that's what I've been using ever since. So basically, I'm just going to top stitch right below the band. So I'm top stitching the seam allowance down to the body of the underwear. And I just want the bottom or the right hand swing to just get close to the seam line. I don't want it on the band. I mean, if it gets on the band, it's not the end of the world. But the idea is to write it right along that seam. So the furthest right swing of the needle will be right at the seam line without going over it. Okay, now it's going to be hard to see on this, but can you see the zigzag stitch? So that's going to keep that all nice and down. You'll really notice a difference when I hit the legs here. So now I'm going to go, again, inside out, because it's easier to sew inside a circle. And I'm going to top stitch now the leg bands down. And I'm going to start at the gusset, just because sometimes the join is not seamless. So that'll be hidden. I mean, all of this will be hidden, let's be honest, but you know what I mean. Okay, and there you have it. One finished pair of underwear. Now you can go back and hit this really good with your iron, or with the steam actually. And really, I know a lot of people have complained about getting wavy seams and stuff, especially down here at the butt. Once you've washed these a couple of times, that's gonna start to hug up, and it'll really hug your body really well. So yeah, there we go. All right, one pair down. Now let's do the next one. Okay, now for our next set of underwear. Here we have a constructed piece here. This is all basically the same thing. We're just using different elastics basically, but I'll go through all of them. So we're going to use, this is a, look at all the pieces here, a picot elastic. So this has like a little pretty edge on one end, and then like a 1/4 inch elastic below. So we'll be sticking with the 1/4 inch seam allowance. And yeah, I'll show you how to do this one. Now, technically, you could go, if you wanted to, and serge all of your raw edges, both the top and the legs, just to finish it off, but you don't need to, because this is knit and it does not ravel. So that's just an option. I'm not going to, just because I'm just lazy. Okay, so I've got, again, I had already measured the pieces. I've cut these the same length as the bands that I did. So I measured my leg opening and then took 85% of that. So I'm using that same ratio of 15% less. And so I've cut my 2 leg elastics at 18.5 and my waist elastic at 26. So I'm just basically gonna go and I'm gonna sew right sides together, and I'm gonna use a straight stitch for this part, just because it's such a small, you could use a zigzag, but it's such a small little like length, a stretch stitch is gonna be fine. So I'm gonna switch back over to stretch stitch, and I'll probably go a little over 1/4 of an inch just because that gets so fiddly. But I'm just gonna sew right sides together with this elastic. You can kind of pick which one you want to be the right side. But I'm just sewing the ends together. And I did a front and a back, so everything's nice and locked in place. So now I have a loop. This is the waistband piece. So just like the other one, and you can kind of finger press that little seam allowance open. You don't really need to press it or anything. So basically we're gonna do the same thing. We're gonna 1/4 our waistband, which our front and the back on this pattern are the same. So I'm just gonna match my side seams up. And I'm gonna use a pen again because we're using such small seam allowances. The quartering technique is really the name of the game when it comes to sewing in elastic or bands or anything that's smaller going into something that's larger. And then I'm gonna do the same with my elastic. You could also mark your elastic instead of with a pen. You could mark it with like a friction, the friction pens that get removed with heat. If you wanted to, if you find that easier, because some of these small elastics do get a little bit fiddly. All right, and then just like with the other ones, now this one we're going to sew with the picot edge down. So we're sewing this to the right side of the underwear. Again, we're doing the waistband. And we're gonna line that the edge of the solid part of the elastic. So the picot, which is the scallopy edge, is pointing down. And it's right side, you know, together, just because you want that seam to, it'll get tucked under when we're done. Yeah. Alternatively, you could also serge this onto your underwear, just like we did the bands, and then come over and top stitch it down. But for the sake of demonstration here, I'm just going to use the machine. But again, you could definitely use a serger and then a cover stitch to do the same thing. And it's projects like this that my serger is a serger and cover stitch combo machine. And while that does save space, I have enough space for a cover stitch machine, and I'm really kicking myself for not having got a cover stitch machine, buying 2 separate machines instead of all in one, because it's projects like this that would make it really easy for me to do that, just to go back and forth. But switching the machine back and forth is a real pain in the rear end. So what I'm going to do is turn this inside out, so we're sewing in a hole. And I'm just going to line the top part of this elastic up to the top part of the underwear. And again, let me put this on, zigzag, and we're going to do a 4 width, going the wrong way, and a 3 length. And you basically are just wanting to stay on that 1/4 inch piece of elastic. And we're just gonna stretch as we go. Again, don't watch your needle. Find a spot. And that 4 width and should go just to either side of that 1/4 inch piece, just perfectly. That seam allowance is getting wonky. Another thing when you are sewing, especially this is the cotton modal one that I'm using, it sometimes helps to kind of pull everything taut from the back as well. Okay, so now, well, sorry, they're inside out. Now you have this sewn where the picot is down. So now all we're gonna do is fold this up. Now you can go to your iron if you want, and iron that up, but we're just, so it's sewn like this. I'm literally just folding this up, and now I'm going to top stitch what we just sewed down, basically. So I want that far right hand swing to just like with the band, to just get to that seam line, but to not sew onto the actual picot. And I have thread in here that actually matches the elastic, which you could change it and make it the color to match the underwear too, or if you're using the same color, it wouldn't matter. But I wanted something just for fun, a little different. So we're gonna again, I'm just finding a spot on my presser foot to line this up. And there you go. That's what that looks like. And you can see my contrasting thread. Again, once this has been hit with some steam, it really sucks it in, and definitely when it's washed. So I'm just gonna do this same thing to both leg holes, excuse me, really quick, and then we'll do the fold over elastic method.
Yeah, why don't you guys go eat lunch? Okay, why don't you go eat lunch? Then we'll do gym, and then orchestra and STEM. Okay? Okay. Tell your sister, go eat lunch. Wait, so it's lunch, and then what? Then gym, then STEM. Can I go to skateboard for gym class? That's fine. Okay, wait, go eat lunch. And then go to gym. to go eat lunch. Hey, stop. You're being super annoying right now. So there you go.
And there are the picot edged ones. Again, these could be hit with steam. Once they're washed, these remind me of mint chocolate chip ice cream because of the copper color of the knit with the mint picot. I think these are very pretty. Okay, now we will do the final treatment. All right, now we're on to our last pair of underwear. So I've gone ahead and I have quartered off both my leg holes and my waistband, just like we've been doing. I have sewn my fold over elastic together at the short ends. And I want to show you something about fold over elastic. This fold over elastic typically has a shiny side and a matte side. Either can be the right side, you can pick. I want the matte side to be the right side, so I have sewn my short ends together, the matte side together, because I want the matte side to be on the outside. But you could just as easily flip it and have the shiny side on the outside. So another thing to note about fold over elastic, if you can kind of see there's a ridge right there in the center that makes folding it over really easy. That is going to be our goal here. So I'm going to start with the waistband. So I've sewn my legs bands together and my waistband, short ends together, right sides together. So now what we're going to do is we are going to take, my underwear is right side out. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew, hold on, I always have to think about this. We want this the other way. Sorry, turn your underwear wrong side out. So we are going to sew the wrong side of the elastic. So in my case, that is the shiny side. The wrong side of the elastic to the wrong side of the underwear. And we're going to line up the edge of the underwear right into that crease where it will fold. So the wrong side of the fold over elastic is against the wrong side of the underwear. And again, we've got the our machine set at a zigzag, at a, 4 width, and a 3 length. And what we're gonna do, now this doesn't have to be perfect because we can go back and trim if some of our underwear material goes past that line. But the goal is to have the edge of the underwear ride right on the left-hand side of that line. And we've got this quartered, so you're gonna stretch this as you go. Actually, I'm gonna pin this just to help keep everything oriented correctly. So the top part of your elastic will be sticking out above your underwear, and that's okay. Okay, now the goal when we're sewing is going to be, we do not want our needle to go on to the right side of that ridge on the fold over elastic. That makes it really hard to turn. So whatever you do, try not to let your needle go onto the other side of that. So I'm basically just going to line that up. Now if your fabric creeps over that line, that's okay, because we can go back and trim that. But we want our the right hand swing of that, what did I do there? Oh my gosh, I pinned that to the wrong thing. Hey. Okay. So we just want to make sure, go slow, and we're going to pull the elastic as we go. Now obviously your elastic has to be on the bottom when you're doing this because you're trying to line up your edge of your fabric with that line in the fold over elastic. Okay, now you can kind of go and make sure you caught, I mean, it's not super imperative. If you missed a couple spots on your elastic, that's okay because it's on the inside, and when we fold over, it will catch all that again. But now we want to look at our line, and if we have any point where the fabric, like right here, my fabric has gone past my line there, I'm just going to take a pair of scissors, and I've got applique scissors here, and I'm just going to trim the fabric right to the top of that stitching line, basically. It happens a lot when you get close to seam allowances because those are bulky. And I did it right here, so. Now I know that there's people out there that can sew their fold over elastic in one pass, like they don't have to do this in two. I'm just not that great with fold over elastic. In fact, really, it's only been within the past year probably that I am somewhat comfortable sewing with it. So it's one of those that just takes some practice. And to be honest, it actually really made me angry that I was so bad at it. Which it shouldn't. When you're learning a new thing, you should be able to, you got to give yourself grace, right? Also, if you don't have any duck-billed scissors or applique scissors, this is a great thing for your sewing box. Like pinking shears, they're just a really great tool to have. Okay, I think we're good. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold it over to the right side. So this is where you wanna make it look a little prettier. I'm gonna start at my seam. And everything should fold over just perfectly. So again, oh, I need to change my bobbin. It was beeping at me. Use. All that zigzagging helps to have these inside out. Okay, so now the goal is for you to zigzag onto the fold over elastic, and you want the left hand swing to go just barely off your elastic. So literally the goal is to have it go just, you know, the needle to slide right next to the edge of the elastic on the right side. But you are gonna stretch as you sew. And there you have it. There is a bound, oh, it's inside out. I was like, why am I seeing two lines of stitching? Well, because it's inside out. There you have a bound seam with fold over elastic. Now, it's a little bit wavy right now, but I'm gonna go hit that with steam, and I'm gonna do the legs, and then I'll hit the whole thing with steam, and you'll see that it really does snug right on up. So let me do the legs real quick, and then we'll go steam everything. Oh my goodness. All right, so here they are right now. I'm gonna go hit it with steam, and I'll show you what it looks like after it's been steamed. All right, and there we go. After a nice steaming, and you'll notice that the butt is kind of, it's because this is cupping this. So when it's worn, you've got space for your rear end to go. So yeah, and once this gets washed, it will be good. So you want that kind of gathering, because that means it's nice and secure. And when it stretches to fit your body, it'll be perfect. All right, there we go.